Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this segment of One-on-One. I'm Martin False, and today our guest, well, he knows the levees backwards and forwards, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're going to also talk where he got started, who was his influences along the way, and how he maintained such an important job in our community. When we come back, our One-on-One, who is it? Well, you probably saw it on the intro, but you'll have to wait for the content. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. So, Mitch, first of all, thank you for being on One-on-One.
Well, thanks for having me.
Let's go down memory lane. I want to go down to the earliest years you can remember. Take me back, set a scene for me, and sort of paint a rosy picture for me.
I guess all my early memories are of being in Dularge with my family. Come from an extremely large family. I think I'm the 26th of 27 grandchildren in my family. My earliest memories were always there at my grandmother's house, running around. It seemed like we always had something to do, always trouble to get into, and that's really my earliest memories. A lot of time in Grand Isle, the camp in Grand Isle on the beach. I know I loved that very much when I was a child.
That Marmande clan is such a big clan, not to take anything away from the maternal sides of all the families.
Sure.
Because they had a lot to do with it too, but just such a big clan and just a lot of prominent people in there. So you sort of had to fight to get the peas passed to you, and when you got them, you had to do something with it, huh?
Sure. I mean, I was one of the youngest. I laugh. First cousins in my family range from 40 years old to 80 years old. So, and my family's been here in Houma since just after the Civil War. So, lots of cousins related to almost everyone in Houma. The old families that are here in Houma. So. A lot of accomplishment, within my own family and then all around and, your immediate cousins. And sure, there was always a competition, always sports, always fishing and hunting. We really did have a great childhood,
And everybody had their own talent, so you had to develop a talent so you could just sit at the table.
Sure,
right?
Sure. People always, I'm a large fella. And they always, ask, well, you're much taller than anyone in your family. And I said, it was survival in my household. I mean, I ate to survive. We had 5 boys, and it was rambunctious to say the least.
Yeah, but you took one of my questions I was going to ask you. You do have a lot of height, and I remember you in a football uniform. I mean, you stood out pretty good, but there weren't a lot of big fellas in the Marmande clan. Where'd you get that?
Marmondes are all really small French people, all 5'8", 5'7". My mother's uncles were all very tall people, 6'5", 6'6", so I must get it from that side of the family.
Yeah. So let's talk about your schooling, moving up. We'll get to the levee district in a little while, and of course your role with helping with all the levees in and around the parish for so long. But let's talk about your schooling a little bit. Where'd you go to grammar school, and let's see how that set the tone for you.
Started out at St. Francis. I think all 7 kids in my family went to St. Francis. Of course, moved on to Vanderbilt Catholic from there. And then it was always a dream to go to LSU ever since I was a little baby, listening to the football games on the radios with my dad. And started out at LSU, ended up graduating from Louisiana Tech University in Ruston. So
yeah,
and that had a lot to do with Clifford being in my life at that point and kind of pushing me towards engineering. I started out actually in pre-med, following my dad's footsteps, and really.
And your mom.
And my mother. My mother, not too many people know this, but my mother did go to medical school and decided to start a family in her senior year of medical school, so she never went back. She did work with my dad occasionally after I was old enough and in school, but yeah, she never went back to medical school.
Yeah, so you had knowledge and smarts on both sides.
Yeah, my mom was an unbelievable student. She's from Opelousas, and I believe the story I was told, if I remember it correctly, was they gave away 21 senior awards, and she won 20 of the 21 awards. Wow. Straight A student all throughout life, even through medical school, just very intelligent. And of course, my dad was one of the smartest people I know as well. So
yeah.
I guess it kind of canceled each other out because none of us are as intelligent as our parents were.
Well, at least y'all don't think y'all are.
Yeah, well, maybe.
But y'all all have characteristics.
Yeah.
I was in school with your sister. I think she was only 8 alphabets away from me. So normally Falls would sit here, and by you get to the next row, Maria would be right next to me. So we'd chit-chat before school. But she was also smart.
Yeah, and all my brothers and sisters were intelligent, but obviously we had good genetics, very good genetics from our parents.
So who was principal at St. Francis? I know my mom was there for 30 years, so she probably saw you in the office every now and then?
Oh, yeah, definitely saw me visiting Sister Danita quite a few times over my career at St. Francis. When I started, I think Sister Katera was the principal, and then maybe my second year, Sister Danita was the principal all the way through. So, and we had several other sisters teaching us at that time. I remember Sister Jules and quite a few others. So I think, my generation is kind of the last generation of being taught by the Brothers of the Sacred Heart and by the sisters at St. Francis. So
I know Sister Danita pretty well, her and my mama, very good friends. If I ran into Sister Danita, just like one time when Tony Alfred said something on the air one time, and he said, I sure hope to God that Sister Danita is not listening. It was during Hurricane Ida. Tony was locked out of his house.
Yes.
And he dropped the F-bomb on live TV. And Sister Danita texted me. She was watching it from Lafayette. And she said, you tell Tony Alfred I'll deal with him later. What was it like? She was tough, huh?
She was tough. I was a fairly good student, always cutting up, always wanting to joke. So I would get myself in trouble. I can remember sitting in Sister Danita's office one time, and she was going through my report card, and my conduct wasn't as consistent as maybe my grades were at that time, and she wasn't afraid to get that paddle out and set you straight, and it did me a whole lot of good.
She was tough.
Tough, yeah.
Oh, she was absolutely tough.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Who were some of the classmates you graduated with? Because normally your classmates tend to feed off each other.
Sure. Amazing thing about my group from first grade on, I've had a core group of friends, and we've remained friends for over 40 years. So, Philip Daigle, DJ Cologne, we all just grew up, Mitch Orso, John Pettigrew, just the whole, Kent Bonvillain, Derek Prentice, and really have remained friends for 4 years. Of course, I work too much to see them as much as we used to, but it's just amazing. I had such a wonderful core group of friends, that.
I had Derek Prentice and John Pettigrew on my float.
Sure.
That was a chore, keeping them in line for the whole ride.
Just getting them on the float for the ride must have been a challenge. I can
say this publicly because I never forget. I had to call Judge Pettigrew one day and say, Judge, I got some good news and some bad news. Well, what's the bad news first? They took your son off the float because he was throwing hamburgers, and one stuck on a police car. The patty went right on the police car. He said, what's the good news? I said, they didn't bring him to jail. He's okay. So
that sounds right.
Y'all tested each other, didn't you, growing up?
We sure did. My mother died when I was young, so my father raised, mostly me and my brothers and sisters. And everyone stayed at my house. The whole crew lived at my house growing up. So I guess I kind of felt a little bit like the voice of reason and the ringleader amongst all those. But, we just had an unbelievable we had, when I look back at grammar school and high school, I mean, we just had a blast, and still do every time we get together to this day. You know, we're all starting to turn 50. We just had a birthday party for Mike Thompson, who was really good, a classmate of ours and friend, and it's like we never stopped hanging out with each. You know, I mean, it's just amazing that you have that type of bond, and the coolest part about all of it is I guess as rowdy as we were, everybody seemed to find their place in life and become successful and raise families, and so it's just pretty amazing to look back on all of that.
It's just amazing because you became such a good guy, and you met a lot of challenges, and your initial challenge, you sort of dodged fate way back.
Sure. When
you survived the accident and all that. And I know a lot of your friends know that, general public probably doesn't, but do you ever look back and go, God had me here for a purpose, now I got to make sure I do something right with it?
You know, that was a heavy part of my young life because, you know, my dad was a very, very spiritual and faith-filled man. And he really beat that into me that God saved my life for a purpose, you know. But that's kind of a burden, you know, at some point when you're trying to figure out which way you want to go, you know, with your life, you know. I always had a lot of confidence. I don't know why. Quiet confidence, but confidence and, you know, I guess I knew I could figure things out. I don't think people around me had that confidence in me, but that never really seemed to bother me. And I definitely get that from my father. Just know what you want out of life and know how to get there.
But isn't that a Mormon trait?
I guess it probably is. You know, we were such a close family, always spending time. I mean, I have first cousins who are like brothers to me, you know, and they would all say the same thing. But yeah, I mean, just I guess when you go through in and out of as much things as we've been through, a lot of tragedy in my family, certainly in my immediate family and extended, and you have that togetherness through there, I mean, it just can only build confidence in you. And we've certainly had our share of that, but never why is me type of deal. Just pick up where you need to pick up and move forward. So.
Yeah.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
When did you say, I mean, with your engineering degree, and of course you worked on a lot of projects, when did you start, or when did it happen that you got involved with the levee district? Take us through that story. I'm sure the public would like to know that too.
I always had somewhat, you know, when I graduated and moved back, I started doing projects at T. Baker Smith. Always riding in the car, learning as much as I could from Clifford and Kenny and the wonderful people over there like Mark Rogers who works for me today, and just absorbing as much as I could. But I always kind of worked on little levee projects over the years. And so I know that some parts of Morgan's I worked on before I was even program manager, you know, like little design reaches or little roads, maybe part of the feasibility report, doing work in that. So always had a little bit of attachment to it, not an immersement in it, but around the end of 2008, I was doing all kind of different projects all over. The levee district kind of sat me down and asked me if I wanted to take control of and become the program manager. At that time, I really didn't want my whole focus to be one singular project, you know. And that, at that point, it was, you know, I was career building at that point, which way I was going to go. But I guess after a lot of thought and prayer, decided that maybe that was the best path for me. And we kind of started early in 2009, which was really cool because it was right when the levee district had decided that they weren't going to sit around and wait anymore for the Corps, and they were going to actually start building component parts of Morganza. So right in the beginning, you know, I started on that aggressive building program, and it ended up being more than I could ever imagine, and the best career move that I could have made, for sure.
But when you're looking at everything you did, that's meticulous work.
Sure.
Were you always meticulous as a kid, or is it something you had to learn?
No, not at all. And most engineers are extremely meticulous, but I am definitely have a better concept of what the big picture is than almost, 9 out of 10 people, and I've always kind of had that. So I know how to get to the goal, and I think that's what's been really crucial. I really rely on a lot of very meticulous people so that nothing does get through the cracks, and lucky to have that. But look, to be where I was when I was very lucky, okay, to be at T. Baker learning from the people I was learning from, and then to have an opportunity to run that much construction. I mean, you just don't get that unless you work for the federal government or for maybe a large state agency. And I was able to get that right here in Terrebonne Parish, which I never wanted to leave here. I always wanted to improve this community. So that was an amazing thing to have that happen to me in my career.
I took an airboat ride with Clifford Smith one day, and I know you're going to know this to be a very true story when I finish it.
A lot of cussing was going on.
Well,
yeah.
that's exactly where I was going. I said, Mr. Clifford, he was like an icon back then, bigger than life. We get in the airboat. I said, Mr. Clifford, if I can ask you before we start, we're going to be rolling tape the whole way through. I know you're very colorful with your language sometimes. So if you could maybe tone it down a little bit, that would be great. We wanted to edit everything out. He said, okay, yeah, no problem. We're not a minute into the airboat ride. Okay. And I mean, it went on the whole, Martin, look at that blank levee. Like, this is crazy. And then, but
I remember that so well.
That's
I really
old school.
Do. Yeah, just super passionate, super smart. He understood water in this parish like very few people I've known, and just learned a lot from him. Learned how to run a business, and then learn the technical aspects of it as well. So just very lucky. A lot of people don't know this, but Clifford's wife, Joanne, and my father are first cousins, okay? And they all graduated Terrebonne the exact same year. Clifford and my father were roommates at LSU. So I was always around their family. Our camps were next door to each other in Grand Isle. Actually, his camp was on our family property for years until he finally built a new camp. They had that little trailer down there. I don't know if you remember that. So, I just was always around that family with Stevie and Kenny and all the girls. And likewise, they had 7 children, we had 7 children. So, it makes sense how I ended up at T. Baker Smith and having the opportunity to learn the stuff that I did.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.
So much to see on HTV. Stick with us 'cause we're your home.